What is up, everybody? Movie review here, and I know it's been a long time, but we're back and we're doing them again. So today we'll be talking about my favorite movie of all time, bar none, and it's a movie that I believe is a masterpiece and is a perfect 10 out of 10 film. That movie is Rocky. And I think the reason why that is because I was introduced to it at a very young age. When I was younger, I would just skip to the training montage and the fight, and that was it. It wasn't until I was a teenager when I actually decided to sit down and watch the film from beginning to end, and ever since then it's been my favorite movie of all time. It strikes a chord with me personally, but I also think anyone who watches it can relate to it. It's a movie that has boxing in it, but it's not really a boxing movie. It's a drama, it's a character piece, it's a character study. Every character in this movie is memorable and goes through so much development and just feel like genuine, real characters. And it's just something that I personally don't think has ever really been topped. The world they paint in this movie feels like a living, breathing place. The movie was shot on a shoestring budget. The behind the scenes perfectly match what's going on in the movie, so you really do feel, watching it, that this was a very personal story to Stallone, and that he made it because he genuinely wanted to make it, not for money or anything like that, but because he had a story to tell and that it was so personal to him, and you really feel that when you're watching the movie. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's break it down, and I could gush for hours, but I'm going to try. This is not going to be what do they call it? This is not going to be like a video essay or anything. This is just going to be a fan of the film just talking about why I love it so much. It's not a review, it's just me gush. If you want the review, go see the movie. That's your review, right? Like that's all you need to know. It's a masterpiece, it's a 10 out of 10, it's a perfect film. I wouldn't change a frame in the movie, I wouldn't change a line of dialogue. It's, in my opinion, a perfect movie. One of the reasons I personally love this movie is that I think everybody can relate to it. It's the originator of the underdog story. I know there might have been some beforehand, but to me this is the one that perfectly created the underdog story that every movie, 40 plus years later, are still trying to mimic and still trying to capture the heart of this film and can't do it. I think it just taps into that just human nature, that everyone in their own life feels like the underdog, even if you're a billionaire, in charge of, all this shit, right? You still personally probably feel like the underdog of your own story, and I think that's why this movie resonates with so many people, including myself. Rocky as a character, he's not like, some genius billionaire. He's not he's not your typical protagonist character in a movie. He's the everyman. So as I've stated, I think Rocky's a great character. He actually goes through an arc, and there's a lot of depth to him, and we see a lot of layers. When we're first introduced to Rocky, he's in this shitty ring fighting some other nobody with like 15 people, and people are shouting and saying, you bum, and this and that. So when we're first introduced to him, we see him as a lot of other people would see him, maybe like this, this bum, this dimwit or whatever. But as the movie goes on, you learn more and more about him, and a lot of it's just through facial expressions or just little, sentences here and there, or just how he, physically acts. We see many sides of him pretty early in the film. In that first match, right, in that first boxing match, he gets headbutt, and he gets, cracked in the face, and you just see like this animal come out and just start wailing on this dude. So already right from the beginning, he's kind of a brute, right? But then later, you know, not too much later, we see his job. He's a debt collector, right? He goes, you know, to collect a debt from a guy, and he's supposed to break his thumbs, but he doesn't. So in that moment, you also see that he's a pretty sympathetic character and a pretty kind, but with something, you know, with something in there. But even then, you know, you start peeling away those layers and you see other, you know, other things that he says and does, and just makes him such a deep and rich character. The supporting cast is fantastic too, and once again, they all go through a change and they all have their own arcs. You know, Adrian, when we first see her, she's very shy and very reserved and quiet, you know, and it takes Rocky to, you know, tear down that wall, right? And, you know, after that wall is torn down, you know, we see a lot of different layers to her and how much strength, you know, inner strength she actually has that she didn't think she had if it wasn't for Rocky. So those two characters completely, you know, they complete each other. She gives Rocky purpose, and Rocky helps tear down those barriers that were, you know, just had her pigeonholed in a certain spot. And then on the other side, you have Paulie, who in this movie is honestly just kind of a piece of shit, but, you know, the way it sets it up, you understand why Rocky even kind of tolerates him, because he does have moments of humanity. So I was watching the audio commentary, and Stallone, obviously he wrote it, perfectly summed it up by it's a very love-hate relationship. And you definitely see that, and once again, a very deep character. Throughout the whole movie, he's just this pot that's got boiling water in it, and it just keeps boiling until finally it, you know, erupts, and we finally see that. Apollo Creed, he's not portrayed as an evil bad guy like a lot of the other Rocky opponents. The last character we need to talk about is Mickey, and once again, a very in-depth character. We don't necessarily see a lot, but you can just tell there's a lot of baggage there. A very memorable performance that will, you know, be mimicked and parodied from now until the end of time. They give every other supporting character in this movie just so much depth, and they just feel so real, and it's incredible how, you know, it's even pulled off. Aside from just the characters, right, the writing is obviously fantastic, very, as I've stated earlier, very down to earth and very real and a very gritty world, but it has ultimately an aspiring, uplifting ending. So we have a lot more than just, you know, the acting, the writing. It's in my opinion also great on a technical level too, from the camera work and the editing, the sound design, everywhere. And you have to remember that this is also shot on a shoestring budget, so the fact that it's even impressive at all on a technical scale is incredible. All in all, it's a film that every piece just falls in line perfectly. That's going to do it for this review. Definitely check out my review of the rest of the series. That's going to do it for this movie review, guys. See you next time.